Hi, I'm Jacob Adams, and this is Connecting the Dots, Volume 19. Yesterday, I was browsing through Instagram, and I stumbled upon Gary Vaynerchuk's video where he's talking about how people aren't going to care or don't care or nobody cares about what you do. And he used Prince as the example, Prince the singer, because when Prince passed away, he goes, Prince got a day and a half. He goes, man, if Prince only got a day and a half, then nobody's really going to care about what happens to you, or et cetera, et cetera. Now, that may sound morbid to some people. I get that. At the same time, it's also very freeing. It's very liberating. I could even feel the words resonate through me, like the liberation I feel when, on some level, we are free to do what we truly want and go after what we truly want. Because if we treat life like a gift, like some sort of miracle of sorts, then we can start understanding that this moment here, we can act in it, do in it our absolute best, express ourselves fully, and nobody really is going to care. My last video of Connecting the Dots, Volume 18, I see he's only gotten 1 view. Now, I'm not really complaining. There's some videos that got 1,000 views, or there's some that got way more views with far more popular subjects than an unknown Connecting the Dots. If you're just tuning in to Connecting the Dots, this is my weekly video, which was once a newsletter. And it comes from the quote that Steve Jobs said. He said, "You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking back." So you have to, on some level, trust that things will make sense as you move forward. And so going back to what I was saying is, even this video, when I look at Connecting the Dots, Volume 18, has got 1 view, and this is now Volume 19, I'm making it with a sense of liberation, even knowing that it's totally okay. It's totally okay. So I'd like to reward you, the viewer that made it this far in Connecting the Dots, Volume 19, with some overall insights that I've discovered in this life. One of the things I was discovering today, for example, was that people on Earth will trigger you. In other words, people on Earth. I know that sounds funny because most people that you've met are only on Earth. I'm just saying that here on this place we call reality, this Earth of ours, people will sometimes look to say things and do things on purpose to test you, to trigger you, to see how truly committed and sold you are to your vision and ideals. I'll give you an example. When somebody is a pastor and if a regular person goes out and binges on a night of drinking, nobody bats an eye. But if a pastor of a church, of a well-known church, goes out on a binge drinking, then people do take note and say, look, we got this guy binge drinking. That's actually one of the reasons I never really wanted to be known as a man of faith. My commitment and my expression and my overall verbalization of searching for God and being a yogi has been one that's taken all my life to get to this point where I can lovingly say, it's not even confidently, it's I lovingly express that I search for God and I meditate for God and with God and I give God all the credit. That's been a deep inner search to get there. I struggle with atheism and stuff like that to get here to where I am now. And what does this mean about why did I bring up Gary Vaynerchuk, and now I'm discussing God and faith and being verbal about my faith? Well, like I said, it's like there's a level of freedom that comes when you realize that on some level nobody really cares, and we also live in a world where people want to test you and trigger you and say things to you and just express some sort of competition towards you for being you. And when I think back to my life, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I was knowingly more aware of competition in my existence, and I enjoyed it on some level. As I've gone into a more spiritual path, you're not really competing with any one thing except your own inner voices and demons and doubts. And that's what I've discovered as I've gone through a spiritual path. Again, years ago, I think, I would have competed more so with people in my marketplace and felt more and thought about, staying on top of the game that was very evident. And I do know there's a level of that still that I respect. In other words, I know what, let's say in fitness, I know what sticks, what trends are here, what science sticks. And as of right now, believe it or not, for example, fitness is currently not at a standstill, but it's in a deep dive to its practice. Fitness is currently in a deep dive of its own practice. Why? Because all of the information that works is already out there. Yoga's out there, CrossFit is out there, Olympic lifting is out there, bodybuilding is out there. You have Zumba, you have spinning, you have sports like rugby, you have football, you have soccer. So we know with very good accuracy what makes a champion as far as science. Now what we're seeing is a deep dive into the commitment of those practices for whatever length of time. Let's take, for instance, let's say we'll look at the Dallas Cowboys. Connect the dots here. I don't mean to lose you. Connect the dots, meaning we're talking about fitness, and now we're talking about the Cowboys. Well, the Cowboys are a football team. The Dallas Cowboys are a football team, and they're having trouble really gaining any steam over the last 2 years. They just lost to the Texans this last weekend, and I'm a fan of the Cowboys, by the way, and the fans are sort of like, oh man, where is the victories that we were anticipating, with Dak Prescott starting off so good at his first year. Now we're seeing a lack of sizzle here toward the overall team. So what is going on there? Is it a lack of science, or is it a lack of inner commitment? Right? I mean, these people have the best food in the world at their access, the best training facilities. This is a $1 billion, franchise, right? And so the science isn't really missing, one could say, with the best sports coaches, the best sports medicine, the best athletic trainers. It would be assumed at $1 billion franchise like the Cowboys, they're not really missing the science of things. They're not missing the talent of things. One could only think there's likely a spiritual and inner commitment and a cohesive function of inner drive missing from an elite team like that. And in that same vein, it's not so much that we are missing as a society what to do, what to eat, how much to train. Those variables are pretty much established on a minimum level. The exercise, American Council of Exercise, recommends that a person exercise 140, 150 minutes a week, which is approximately 3 to 4 times a week. Okay, depending on how you count it. An hour a day, it's about 3 to 4 times a week. And I can attest that that would make a difference in a person's physique and energy levels, etc. So we know that what variables to change to make people improve. I consistently tell people, for example, do not have sugar, do not have breads. I have that conversation so many times a day, so many times a week. How much bread are you having? Because we know that white flour, for example, makes people gain weight. We know that there's a correlation between how much pasta, white flour, and sugar a person is having, how much processed food a person is having, and how much weight gain they're having, right? So we know what variables cause it. Ultimately, it's how much focus, inner focus, determination, drive, motivation, and why a person is going to get in shape that is going to drive them to push a little deeper, a little harder, commit a little more to their fitness goals. And so those are some of the things that we can address now. That fitness is currently pretty established. There isn't something really new coming out in any time, any foreseeable future. Maybe there'll be something coming along. CrossFit was one of the last big movements of since 2000 that came out in 2009, really popularly wise with the CrossFit Games, and that's been developing. It was developing for some time before then. Now, in 2012, when CrossFit came out, a little bit heavier, a little bit more popular, it had about a 2 to 3 year period there where it was really catching ground. With the average individual looking to keep up with some of the athletes, which was what some of the original Fire was about, we started seeing some injuries. And some of these injuries led people to not really feel CrossFit. I myself, which am a seasoned athlete of sorts, and I've been training for many years, I even found myself getting some minor injuries, whether it was a little bit of a nagging knee pain, a nagging shoulder pain, etc., or some minor issues. But there are some people that if they had no training experience, had no level of weight training, and they would try to keep up with some of the professionals with thinking that they were going to have, match their level of performance, that naturally was leading to some injuries. Okay? And so let's continue with Gary Vaynerchuk's first idea, which is that nobody cares. So now that we know that nobody cares, and like, for example, if you want some of my videos or some of the ideas that are more steady and on one topic, you can look at some of my other ones. This Connecting the Dots series, this Connecting the Dots concept comes from a very free-flowing newsletter that I would write. Okay, so that's why it has sort of like a thread that flows, ebbs and flows into it. Okay, we started our conversation with Gary Vaynerchuk saying nobody cares. Then we went into how it's okay. And then I got into fitness not necessarily having a new idea. One thing that we are seeing in the marketplace right now is funny little like trinkets that are coming up that are into like mobile gyms. Like, for example, the TRX is the one tool that is a mobile suspension trainer that actually is okay. Like, I've never really grown accustomed to loving the TRX, to be quite frank. I don't know if I ever will love it. I think it's an okay training tool for people, and it does work the core and helps midline stabilization. And therefore, it's pretty cool, like, in that regard, okay? It's pretty cool for the midline stabilization that it does inspire in people and help people get more midline stabilization and more drive in the core, okay? As far as a preference, I'm not like Mr. TRX himself. And we're seeing that other tools come into the marketplace trying to get some of that market share for people that travel, people that don't want to go to the gym. I don't know. Personally, as somebody that has worked out and worked at a gym for many years, there's nothing really that can give you the same energy as a gym does, where the environment is designed with one thing in mind, which is to lift. And I can't visualize myself being in my living room, like getting this awesome workout with like all the space where I'm not afraid I'm going to break something. So I'm not really feeling that. Sometimes, for example, I've gone through Instagram and I see some people living in ways that are questionable to my own values. And I think to myself, and this is how I'll leave you with this last idea, and that's where I kind of inspired myself to go ahead and connect the dots. See, I've talked about analyzing triggers before, and I was posting Instagram the other day, and someone was living in a way that I thought was questionable to my own values. And I found myself a little bit like thinking, wow, does this person live like this? And I don't feel I could live like that. I'll leave it at that without getting too blatant. And I started saying, well, I didn't have anything to process today. I talk about how in the Warriors way we analyze something. So, well, let me analyze that. And so when I did the deep dive and analyzed all of that trigger, I saw that people sometimes, every level of growth that we encounter within ourselves has a trigger that can match it, and we have to keep growing past that trigger, and that's where our next level of growth is. And the way I see it, the theory is this, that as we grow, eventually we will get enlightened. I don't know. I actually work on meditation and going deep into a mantra and trusting God and praying to God and asking God for the right soulmate, because I've been in relationships that didn't work and I'm tired of that. So, I go through a deep dive in deep meditation for sometimes 20, 30, 40 minutes. And I've been working on that for some years now. I've been applying for Kriya Yoga lessons and stuff like this, and really searching within my heart for some deep answers. And all that said, it's interesting that I wonder, well, where is this concept of not having buttons or not being able to be triggered leading us to? And to my best understanding, I think it's leading us to be an enlightened individual of sorts, to some respect. This is Jacob Adams. I hope you've enjoyed the video and the topics, as free-flowing as they are. I'll leave you with one idea that Gary Vaynerchuk gave, and that's like, do what you want to do, in the sense that don't fear doing something that is truly important for you to do. For me, it's developing this YouTube channel. It's lifting weights. It's being a coach. It's being a leadership coach. It's developing my Advocare business. Those are things that are important to me. It's finding my soulmate and developing a family and living a life of love and purpose. That's important to me. You may have none of those values, some of those values, etc. The most important thing is to remember that you're free to do as you really truly desire to do, because nobody cares. And that's actually, on some level, very refreshing. So this is Jacob Adams. We'll see you next time. Comment or let me know any questions you have. Bye.